mics are pretty loud today.
They are quite loud today.
Not what they call. Tom, can you hear us?
I am here. Welcome. Good evening.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Good to hear your voice.
Good to hear your voice. I wish I could be there instead of sitting at my home table drinking and having a fun time.
Planning Commission.
Well, we understand.
I can be the pledge from here.
Can you guys hear me okay?
A little bit. It's a little in and out,
A
so.
little muffled, Tom.
Well, that happens when you get old.
You guys good to go?
Yep.
Yes. Yep, right on.
Welcome everyone to our Logan Municipal Council meeting for today, November 21st. It is 5:31. We're calling our meeting into order. Before we do our opening ceremony, I'll be leading us into the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please stand up. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. I have the pleasure of introducing Pastor Eli Braley from Cache Valley Bible Fellowship, who will be sharing with us a message about Thanksgiving.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Our church, Cache Valley Bible Fellowship, has been a part of this valley since 1965. It has been our church's joy to call Cache Valley our home these many years, where we have sought to serve this community through prayer, the preaching and teaching of God's Word, and the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and through community engagement and service. We've also been blessed by the many relationships we've formed here and by the richness of this community. Our hope is to be here serving this valley come 2065 and 2165, and however long it may be until the coming of King Jesus. I've been asked this evening to provide a brief reflection on Thanksgiving, which is now upon us. It is greatly fitting that we have set aside an annual time to underscore our daily obligation to give thanks to God. But as we move through this week, I want to draw our attention to a danger which faces us whenever we celebrate this holiday. We are told to count our blessings, name them one by one. Now, this could be a wonderful exercise, but it can be a dangerous one too, depending on how we count. Given our limited perspective as human beings, and given the sinful tendencies of our hearts, we can easily miscount. We can look across the fence to that other person who appears to have more blessings than we do. We can undercount the blessings in our own lives. We can count things to be blessings when in fact they are not good for us. Or we can count things not to be blessings, when in fact they are among the greatest blessings God has given us. We can clasp our fingers around an earthly blessing, which may be taken from us tomorrow. To focus on the blessings and on our ability to count them, rather than upon the Lord who gives them, is to lay an unstable foundation for our thanksgiving. For we do not often understand the gifts of the giver, while a sure basis for thanksgiving is ever found in the unchanging character of the God who is revealed in the Scriptures and in Christ. This Thanksgiving, I want to encourage all of us to put the focus squarely upon God rather than upon his gifts. Yes, let's give thanks for the gifts, but like windows, let's look through them to the one who rules on high. Let's be grateful this year, not merely for the many things that we enjoy, but be grateful that there is a God in heaven who has overcome death and rules with wisdom, mercy, justice, power, and love. Let's be grateful that even when we don't understand the world, he does, and he is working all things after the perfect counsel of his own will. Only by focusing upon God can we say with Job, when life seems to strip us of all our blessings, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In Jesus Christ, God's steadfast love is made known to all who fear him, and those who believe can face every uncertainty and any suffering with the confidence that God will take care of his people who trust in him. Last night, I attended a Thanksgiving hymn sing at Grace Baptist Church, and I was struck by these lines from the hymn, Because He Lives, because Jesus lives, which I will close with this reflection. I will close with this hymn. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy he gives. But greater still, the calm assurance that this child can face uncertain days because he, Christ, lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. Would you join me in prayer? Almighty God, before whom all hearts are open, O Lord, we give you thanks that you reign on high. You rule above this world and above our lives and above this council. And Lord, I pray for this council tonight as they do their work, that you would help them and guide them and give them wisdom, that they would make good decisions. And Lord, as we go through this Thanksgiving holiday, I pray that our focus would be directed to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Braley. Next in our agenda, we have the acceptance of the minutes and the approval of the agenda. I did want to mention that I did reach out to Teresa with the need to add a few more details to the minutes to a section there. So
I'll move acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda.
I'll second that.
it's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Tom?
I agree.
Amy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Ernesto? Aye. We've accepted our minutes and approved our agenda for tonight. Next, just a reminder that our meetings are the first and the third Tuesdays of the month at 5:30, and our next meeting will be on December 5th. And also a reminder that we have canceled our second meeting for the month of December. We'll still be able to meet our requirement to meet at least once during the month. Next is the time for anybody in the audience who wishes to address the council. Even though the mayor is not here, you can speak regarding topics that are not on the agenda for tonight. So if you would like to speak about a specific item on the agenda, please wait for that to come up. And looks like we have our first person here.
Yeah, so my name's Erin Bennett, and while he was sharing, I thought of a story that Darren Perry shared with us during the Earth Day event about Native tradition. And he told a parable, which I'm going to butcher, I'm going to do my very best, about a native hunter who went and shot an elk and took the elk home to his family. And started cutting it up, and the beaver trapper asked him what he was going to do with it and where he was going to store it. And the native hunter thought about it, and then he invited everybody in the village to come to his home, and he threw a big party, and everyone ate all of the elk. And after the party was over and the elk was gone, the trapper asked the native hunter what he was going to do now in the winter, because he hadn't stored his meat. And the native hunter said, "I store my feast in the belly of my brother." That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Mahler from Logan. I just want to read something for it to you. It's one of my favorite quotes from a president, that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. Abraham Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address. I think that we need to constantly remind ourselves that the government is the people, and we need to start bringing it back to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda, we have no mayor staff reports for today. We'll continue to council business, and we have a planning commission update. Jeannie?
Yeah, Planning Commission at last meeting approved 2 more short-term rentals. One of them is in a cul-de-sac, 1430 East, 273 North. And it is a 6-bedroom short-term rental of the entire home. There were a lot of the neighbors there, and they were not very excited. They do have an HOA, and I think they're going to see whether the HOA can prevent this from happening. But the fact of the matter is that we had to approve it because it met the criteria that we have. And if they pursue anything else, it's a civil thing. There was another short-term rental, 693 North 100 East. It is just across from the east side of the parking lot of Smith's Marketplace. It's a blue house right now. The Island Paradise was approved. It's a residential 3-lot, single-family residential subdivision at 456 East, 100 North. It is 1 house, 2 house, 3 house going back into the block. And last but not least, Brent Miller Enterprises was a commercial retail dwelling or business on 1.32 acres at 230 North 10th West. In the commercial zone, it will have commercial suites and will have a drive-through. I don't remember Russ put in their drive-through coffee shop, but nobody said that out loud during the meeting. So.
It was just on the imagery, so.
Oh, okay. So I don't know, it's a drive-through. It's gonna have a drive-through. And then there were 2 rezones that are on the council agenda this evening that you will workshop. So.
Thank you, Jeannie. Next, we have a financial statement presentation by Richard Anderson.
Pleased to be able to present the fiscal year 2020-30 financial statements. They are available online. If anyone is interested, just go to the finance department under financial information, and we do have the last 10 years worth of financial statements presented there. It's worth reminding everyone that the budget is where we set the plan for the city. The financial statements are really the results of that plan, and it's my pleasure to be able to report that we have good financial results because of the plan that is put in place, the leadership of the mayor, and the oversight, direction, and discipline of the council in adopting that plan. We have good reserves in each of our major funds. We're still building some for future capital projects in certain funds, but we have adequate emergency reserves in nearly every fund. And not just that, but the financial results themselves are very good. We are staying within budget. We're abiding by the laws. I will turn over the time now to Stephen Rowley from KNC CPAs, Certified Public Accountants, who performed our audit, so he can kind of describe some of the his opinions and the other information in the audit.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Ernesto, and the rest of the council. My name is Steve Rowley. I was the engagement partner on the city's audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. Our responsibility as auditors is to come in and perform a financial statement audit of the financial statements here as required by state code. There are also state compliance procedures that are performed, and as a result of a significant amount of federal funds that were received and used by the city, there's also a single audit over those federal funds. So there's several things to go over, and some of it may sound a bit like a broken record, but we'll try and make it as helpful as possible.
Thrilling as possible.
I was going to say entertaining, but this is a large book.
It is.
We're not going to go through all of it. However, as Rich mentioned, it is available for anybody to read and look at. If anybody's curious about it, please don't hesitate to go in and start diving in. The first part of the financials, the introductory section, and then the management's discussion and analysis is very helpful to give your average citizen a good overview of what happened in the city. So now our responsibility here is to report back to the council how the audit went. We're not hired by finance, we're not hired by management, we are hired by the council to come in and do that. And so we're returning to report to you how the audit went and the results of our audit. We can do that most easily if we jump into the report. If you have a copy in front of you, great. If not, I'll hit the high points. And you're always welcome to call me up or send me an email with any questions that may come up later on. Happy to answer any. So page 11 is our independent auditor's report. And it starts out with our opinion and states that we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the City of Logan as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2023, and the related notes to the financial statements, which collectively comprise the city's basic financial statements as listed in the table of contents. And in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the City of Logan, Utah as of June 30th, 2023, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows thereof for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That is a long run-on sentence that states these financial statements, you can rely on them, they are materially correct. What does it mean materially correct? We cannot audit every single transaction and every penny that comes through, nor is that required. So we cannot audit everything. However, based on following audit standards and our professional standards as certified public accountants and our sampling and test-based approach, we are able to give our opinion that they are materially correct. Now, how do we come up with that opinion? Well, that's what the rest of this letter talks about. It goes through what the basis of the opinions are, which includes we are required to plan and perform the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards in order to ensure there is sufficient work performed so we can give that opinion. As part of that, we do test-based approach, we do confirmations with banks, vendors, customers, all types of individuals to look at information that's outside of the entity to help corroborate what's inside. The old adage is trust but verify. The city's always done a good job. Our experience has been they've done a great job. That's not enough. We have to go verify what they're doing. And so that's really what a lot of the audit work comes down to, is verifying the information that they have prepared and going to those outside sources. Management is responsible to monitor the activities day to day to make sure that the money coming in is being recorded and accounted for properly. The money going out, same thing. Everything related to the finances, that's under kind of management's umbrella. Now, above that, you have senior management, and then you have council and mayor, which ultimately dictate everything that happens within there. So through your support, through your efforts, you help to ensure that there are good controls within the city. A lot of that information may seem a little foreign. If you're not very financially minded as an individual, that's okay. One of the best things you can do as a council member is to say, what can go wrong and where do we plug up any holes that there's something that might happen. That's a good way to start the conversation. And between Rich and Ruben and the rest of the accounting staff, they'd be happy to go on an adventure to see what can be done to make things even a little tighter.
Rich loves to plug holes.
Yeah, it does. And our experience has shown that is a high priority of not only the finance department, but the council as well. So we appreciate that as we come in to do audits, we know that that the finance department has the backing of the mayor and council to ensure that things are being done properly and they have sufficient support. So now our responsibility as auditors is a lot of things. We talked about the professional standards. At the bottom of that page, it has a bullet list of the high-level items that we are responsible for. I just want to cover a couple of these just to give a better idea of what's going on. So the first one is exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit. That's a fancy way of saying we need to be just a little bit paranoid about what's going on. So we can't take anything at face value. Like I said, we're looking to outside sources to help confirm what finance is put together for that. The second part is to identify and assess risks of material misstatement. So that's where we look at all of the internal controls of the city, whether that's money coming in, money going out, payroll, their preparation of the financials, all of that information. We look at those processes and procedures to see what's working, where is there maybe some additional risk, where do we need to beef up the testing here or there and switch it up from year to year. So as part of that process, we do look at internal controls of the city. However, we do not give an opinion on those internal controls. There's a separate report we'll look at related to that shortly. Flipping over the page, it talks about the required supplementary information. That is the management's discussion and analysis, as well as the budget to actual schedules. There's the pension-related funding schedules that are also in the back. A required supplementary information is something that is not required by generally accepted auditing standards or generally accepted accounting principles even, but government accounting standards says this is important information to give residents and users of the financial statements additional information to make good decisions. So that MD&A gives you that 10,000-foot level overview of the city, what happened, compares it to the prior year, and gives some narrative so that anybody can look to see how are they doing, are they reaching the goals that they're shooting towards, all of that. The pension information in the back is useful because it's scheduled to have a 10-year rolling history of the pension funding, the city's proportionate share of that net pension liability or net pension asset. And so you can kind of see how, I guess, the trend of what's going on over the years. And so that's some helpful information. If you're kind of a numbers geek, then that may be more intriguing than other parts of the financials. But it is in there for your information. The second part is the supplementary information. So there's a lot of other schedules that are in there that are helpful to provide additional information, but that are not specifically audited or given opinion on. Included in the supplementary information is actually the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So although we are not required to give an opinion on the CFA itself, we give an opinion on it in relation to everything else. So everything within that federal expenditure report reconciles back to the underlying information, and specifically the areas that were audited did have audit procedures performed over that to ensure that the strings that are attached to those federal funds were properly followed and complied with. So there's also a report, we'll talk about that shortly. So we'll jump back to page 113 is where the next report jumps in at. That's not to say that
Those 112 pages aren't important.
exactly, they are very important, but that's more something that Rich can certainly go over in more detail if you'd like, or if you can't sleep on a Friday night, feel free to pull this out from under your pillows. So this is the report as required by the government auditing standards. So I mentioned earlier about the internal controls of the city. So our responsibility is to look at those internal controls to determine the extent and scope of testing necessary to give an opinion on the financials. In addition to that, If there are any weaknesses or deficiencies in those internal controls, we're required to report those back to you so that you can then take over your responsibility to help them bolster those controls up. As we looked over the internal controls, we did not identify any weaknesses or deficiencies in those controls. We do feel like the city has strong internal controls to help prevent fraud, theft, misuse, abuse, all those types of things that we need to be careful of because we are stewards of taxpayer money. So that is important to know. The second part is related to compliance. So government auditing standards, there's more than just numbers. There's also compliance with laws and rules. We want to make sure that an entity is complying with laws and rules. They're not trying to cut corners when it comes to compliance with anything that could impact the financials. So it could be, are they hiding an OSHA violation? Is there something that there was some environmental issue that came up that they're not telling us that would have an effect on the financials in terms of maybe a penalty or a fine? So as we perform our inquiries, we do our testing, we read through minutes and legal documents, we did not identify anything there that needs to be reported. So that's very well done. Yes?
Are there common compliance issues that cities face?
The more common would be, OSHA is a fairly common one, especially when you deal with like the utility side of things. You've got people in trenches dealing with, the wastewater, things of that nature. You want to make sure you're obviously following those laws. We haven't heard of anything or seen anything in the recent past that's been a violation. Anything that generally comes up will either be disclosed already or accrued as a liability, or would be disclosed in an attorney letter saying, we've identified this is a risk that's out there and we're addressing it, so on and so forth. And a lot of times these things are covered through insurance policies as well. Yeah, excellent question. Did that help answer?
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so skip over the next page, so page 115. This is the report required for the single audit, or what's called the uniform guidance. As I mentioned, the city received a lot of federal funds, and as a result, it triggers what's called a single audit, where testing has to be performed on what's called a major program to determine whether the city complied with the various compliance requirements. There's up to 7 or 8 compliance requirements that are applicable to any federal program in a given year. And so among those, we have to look at the controls related to those compliance requirements, and then we actually test compliance with those as well. So as we look at the top part of that page 115, it states, in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs for the year ended June 30th, 2023. For your information, the program that triggered the single audit this year was the CDBG program. It seems like that rotates through every 2 or 3 years or so. So as part of that, we look at the internal controls related to complying with that. We look at sample-based testing of compliance to see whether it's meeting the requirements that the federal government has put down for those, to ensure that we're complying with all those requirements. And they're not always easy. So it is a big deal to go through a single audit.
So is the single audit triggered by dollar amount or by, but you said, so we get a varying amount of CDBG, so it's only occasionally that it reaches the threshold for the single audit?
Yep. The threshold starts at $750,000.
Oh, stop, sorry.
You're good.
I can't make it stop. I don't know how to make it stop.
Would any of the ARPA funds also be considered part of this?
And remember, it's based on expenditures, not awards. So we could receive, let's say, $750,000 of CDBG funds, but if we only spent $300,000, we may not have a single audit. It's based on the expenditures in a given year, not the revenue.
Correct. Yeah. So that's really when the trigger comes in and say, are you complying with it? There's nothing to comply with until you go to spend the money. So yeah, the last 2 years ARPA was tested. Was the last 2 years? Yeah, last 2 years ARPA was tested as the major program. This year there's very minimal in terms of ARPA funds expended for fiscal 23. So CDBG jumped up above that threshold this year and was the major program. So similar to the last reports we've looked at, management is responsible for complying with those things, for setting in place the policies and procedures to help ensure that you're complying with all of those requirements. Our responsibility is to plan and perform the audit in accordance with all of those standards, plus the uniform guidance, the compliance supplement, to be able to give our opinion on that compliance that I read. Additionally, we are required to look at the internal controls, and although we don't give an opinion on those internal controls, we are required to disclose if there's any weaknesses or deficiencies in those controls. And our report here states that there were no deficiencies or weaknesses identified as a result of the single audit. So that's very well done. That means there's strong internal controls in place to help ensure those funds are being spent appropriately. If we want to turn over a couple pages, we're going to look at the state compliance report. So that's page 119. So this is going to sound just like the last couple of reports we've looked at. It's a two-part report. In this case, the focus is on the state compliance requirements. So every year the state auditor puts out a new state compliance audit guide, and some items are required to be tested annually, and some are on a rotating 3-year testing process. So the areas that were required to be tested are indented there towards the top. We looked at budgetary compliance, fund balance, justice courts, etc. Now for each of those areas, there's specific compliance areas we look at to test, as well as we look at the controls related to those compliance areas. So if we're looking at the Open and Public Meetings Act, one of the controls would be, is there a process in place to ensure that the meeting minutes are uploaded to the public notice website within 3 days of approval, all those. So each of these have compliance and controls related to that we look at and consider. And just like before, even though we don't give an opinion on those internal controls related to that, we would have to disclose any deficiencies or weaknesses there. So our report states that there are no weaknesses or deficiencies in the state compliance internal controls, so that's very well done. A lot of that information is not even within the finance department, so that takes a lot of different individuals across the city to ensure they're doing their part to make sure you comply, including council members, make sure you get your training for Open Public Meetings Act and all of that. We do, however, give an opinion on the compliance related to those, and our report states that in our opinion, the City of Logan complied in all material respects with these state compliance requirements referred to above for the year ended June 30th, 2023. So as you can see, there were no findings related to the audit, so that's very well done. We are always happy to be associated with the city. They're very well prepared. Everything we ask for, they are able to provide to us in a timely manner. And there's been no disagreements, no difficulties in performing the audit. So we really do appreciate it. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this point.
Well, I will say in audit committee, you received great praise as well from our employees who said that you had staff on board for 10 days, more than like 10 days.
5 days here, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, there's several. Yeah.
But they were here for morning till late at night.
Yes,
on
I
the
was.
days they were here. Huh?
Yes, I was.
Yes, I was.
And it was
Yes, I know Rich was upstairs with you during one of our meetings.
During most of that.
Rich was scrambling. No, he wasn't
They
scrambling.
do a great job.
So we really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
One question, how's the process for selecting an auditor? Can you maybe talk a little bit about?
Good question.
Periodically, the audit committee directs us to bid that out. We solicit bids and then evaluate those and select the auditors. I think we have 1 more year left on this contract, and then we'll go through that process again. We usually have those for 5 to 7 years and then switch.
Because it's sort of, the first year is such a changeover learning curve that if you did it for every year, it would be a lot harder to get the process done. And I think that the 5 years seems to be a really reasonable amount of time for them to they know the city, they know where the holes might be, they know how to look for those holes more efficiently than they might otherwise.
We don't require a change. The audit committee doesn't require a change, just simply that we bid that out and make sure we're getting the best.
Yeah.
value for what we're trying to do as a city. KNC CPAs has done a really good job. They're a little unique in that they provide more, they specialize in government, and then they also provide consulting services in government. So as far as auditing firms go, I don't know if there's anybody more qualified to do this type of work than they are, even the really big firms. They don't
We
have-
actually
have people that's specialized.
changed 4 years ago.
From a really good firm to them.
yeah.
So we look forward to working one more year and then bidding that out. And we'd be thrilled if they won that bid again.
So remind me of what the internal audits are that we did here within the city itself.
So we do have an internal audit program that we've kind of developed. Part of it is to comply with state law, but mostly it's just to try to do a good job of monitoring what we do. The audit committee oversees that, sends out people to do oversight of certain cash collection points as well as other points of interest. And then those reports are reviewed at audit committee meeting.
It's good because we looked at the where cash comes in and making sure we have the right systems in place, that there's no potential for unbooking or misbooking.
And even though I believe we have some of the best controls amongst any city in the state of Utah, and probably outside of Utah, we do a really good job. Having said that, nothing is perfect. And just because we have really good internal controls, just like he said regarding his opinions, it's materially accurate. We'll have internal controls that are going to catch the big things, but sometimes other things can slip through simply because we cannot provide absolute assurance of nothing bad happening. That's an impossibility. So I just want to make sure you're aware, we really focus on it. We really work hard on internal control. Nonetheless, bad things can happen, and if we catch those things, we address it and we move forward. Our hope is it catches all of the big items and a whole bunch of small items and immaterial items, even catching those. But good internal control does not provide absolute assurance. So please do not convolute those.
But it does give you a unique opportunity for additional training and for the additional conversation about why it's important for them, for individual departments to be doing X, Y, or Z with their cash.
Absolutely. Always looking at near misses, always looking at things that didn't quite go right and seeing if we can't learn our lesson there rather than having something catastrophic happen.
Does this statement need to be approved by the council by a show of hands or?
What was that?
Can you repeat that, Tom?
Yeah, we had a report given to us, which was excellent. Does the council need to approve this by a vote?
Do we need to approve it?
Except
I don't think we need to. I'll have to look through the state laws and find out if you have to accept it. The problem is, you don't change it. So I don't know what the point of you accepting it is.
Yeah.
The only people that can change that would be our auditor, if something were possibly come to his attention.
Right, because that's why they do the
It is
audit.
what it is. It's not an opinion piece.
No, it's not.
So one last question out of curiosity. How long did you say that the audit took?
So it took 5 days on site, plus another couple days of pre-audit work, plus a whole bunch out after. You'll have to.
Yeah, a lot of what, so the 5 days we're here, Gary was here with me as well, so 2 of the 3 partners were here on site for those 5 days.
And they were 12-hour days. Or
Sometimes more.
Yeah,
We'd get here at 7 and I would leave usually at midnight.
okay.
Because we're trying to make the best of the opportunity here. I'm already out of town, I might as well work nonstop.
Who needs to eat?
So that's fine. So 2 partners working for the 65 plus hour week that week, plus probably 2 days doing preliminary, doing inventory counting, prepping for that, and then there's I don't know, I haven't run the hours on how many hours it took after the fact. We have to go back and then review. We have our own quality control process as an audit firm. So we have to make sure everything is reviewed and properly in place, make sure that everything there supports our opinion that I just presented. So there's probably another 7-8 days maybe of work after we leave to make sure everything's done and ready to go. And that includes single audit, state compliance. The city has a lot going on. There's a lot of funds in a lot of areas to audit, so it does take some time. But we appreciate the thorough preparation of the finance department because it could be much, much worse.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
So we appreciate it.
personal experience.
Thank you.
Yes, he's participated in much, much worse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No other questions, no?
Excellent. Next, we have our action items for tonight.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question?
Yes, Tom?
We have one more meeting before the new year, and we'll have an election result hopefully by then. I'm suggesting that on the next agenda in December 5th, I think it is, that we have an election for new officers so that the new officers can plan and make designations for the committees and so forth. Does that make sense?
I believe you were
It's
talking
just
about
Yeah, he's saying in our meeting on the 5th, we should,
committee assignments.
as new members are seated, that we have the election for next year's officers, and so they can start working on committee assignments prior to the start of the year 2024.
Thank you for reminding us, Tom. I'll make sure to have that on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Looking forward to having you back on the 5th, if possible. So our action items for tonight, first up, we have a public hearing for Resolution 23-49, presented by Rosa Kinar, Parks and Recreation Director.
Good evening, council.
It's good to see you walking. I was worried you might have fallen during the practice ice skating last night.
I did not get on the ice,
That would not have been wise.
but I know people who did, and they are still alive today, too.
Yes, our court judge was one of them. He posted on Facebook as he sailed around the circle.
Judge Edwards.
Good for him.
Yep. He looked very happy.
Okay. This budget resolution is in regards to fees that are being proposed by the Parks and Recreation Department for the Law Plaza ice rink. It's in two parts, right? This is for rink time and equipment to rent. And then the other part of this resolution has to do with golf course fees. And so I'd like to go over, before you have your public hearing on this, to go over the ice rink part first, because I know we had some conversation about it at the last workshop session 2 weeks ago. And for some clarification, I think that this might be helpful before holding the public hearing. So what the Parks and Recreation Department is proposing is for, regarding the ice rink, so this is use of the rink, we are proposing a fee for that. That is currently proposed at $5 per person per session. Now, the resolution that in the workshop session, we presented that at 90 minutes a session. After we received feedback with regards to that, we think we should just state that as whatever the fee becomes per session. We learned last night even from some folks that are city employees who knew about the amount of time, and they stayed for the entire 90 minutes and felt that in some instances that was a little longer than they thought was needed. But rather than having to come back to the council to amend a resolution, we're proposing that it just be stated as session. And then we can determine that. That would give us flexibility to find out from customers themselves as to how long it ought to be. Even amongst our own staff, we still debate whether it should be 60 minutes or retained at 90 minutes. Okay, so one item there is the fee for rink use. Also related to that, with some adjustment that we're proposing, is $3 per person for anyone 60 years and older, military, and what we didn't spell out in detail as far as military goes, that would be for active and veterans. Those 3 years and younger, and we would propose to put on there students with ID. One of the reasons we're looking at including that in that classification is when we load this onto our software that helps us manage this, it's just easier to have fewer entries, and it's easier for our staff when they're doing their transactions to know that this particular line would be for these, different than $5 per person. Okay? And then on Monday nights, which we had in the original proposal as well, but needed a little more clarification, we were proposing $15 as a family night for a group of 5. Any additional members to that group would be at $3 per person. And along with that, because it would be on this particular designation, skate rentals would be free on Monday nights. Okay. With regards to equipment, this applies to skate rentals, walkers or skate trainers as they're called, and helmets. The skates would be rented at $3 per pair, $3 per trainer, walker, and $1 for a helmet if you needed one. Like to get, if council's got any questions, stop me. The other thing that we think would be well for future consideration, but maybe not for right now, would be considering a free night skate, or a free skate night, I should say. Given that we haven't done this, whether here or over at Merlin Olsen Central Park for a while, we don't have a really good feel for perhaps a slow time or a designated time that would seem to work best for considering something of the sort. And so we want to leave that open for consideration and input as we establish that, but we think we could establish that perhaps as an administrative function without having to come back to you. Certainly would consult with you, as we would with our advisory board in that manner. But at this time, we'd rather not try to pin that down because we don't know exactly what works best.
And as I talked to you a little bit earlier today, to me, I think if we're going to do something like a free skate night, it should be for Logan citizens as opposed to a countywide. My perspective on this was, we know that our citizens are in a way going to be underwriting the cost of the ice rink, that these fees are not going to cover the full cost. And I would like to see that there's some additional benefit to the citizens of Logan that doesn't exist for people who come in from outside of the boundaries and the tax basis. So if we could specify, I think that should be free. Or we also talked about over time, maybe Logan citizens have a different pricing bubble than county members.
Sure, and in terms of season definition, in terms of days of operation, if you will, we're establishing the fact that we will start the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and right now our end date is proposed to be the last day in March. So that gives about, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 months.
4 months.
4 months of ice rink operation time. that I think we could fit something in within that schedule.
So I was talking to someone today and about this, and it was someone, it was my sister actually, and she said, oh, you know, she goes to Grand Rapids, Michigan quite often, and they have a skate rink, and she sent me all of the information, and their prices are much cheaper than what we have proposed. They're $4 for adults 18 and over and $2 for youth 17 and under, and they include a skate rental with that. But their sessions are 90 minutes. You have to reserve them in advance. You can reserve 50. They have 50 spots that you can reserve in advance, and they have a punch pass. So I was thinking, I guess I need to understand, we chose these rates because they best reflect our costs, or did we choose them because they were in line with the surrounding area, or how did we come upon the fees that we chose to charge?
Sure. More the latter, because we don't have really good data
Right.
to compare cost to, and we would be going back 8 years to
Right.
Logan Olson Park, and even that was spotty. So we don't have good data, so that's the reason why we reached out to these other operators in the state, mind you. We didn't look outside the state, and looked at what we thought would work in terms of what we knew of the ice rink here in Logan.
Because I mean, our goal, I would think, is to have as many people there every day as possible.
Yes, I'm trying to balance that. So one of the things with the practice run last night was to see how many we could get on the rink comfortably without it then becoming, you know, a whole different issue regarding what you were
A
paying
pinball
for.
machine.
Yeah. Right.
It would be just like everybody in a row going around.
Although we didn't quite achieve that because we could have used more. We did think that the number previously that we had in mind as far as maximum capacity actually needs to be lower than what we were thinking. What we were thinking originally when we were still in design and asking both the manufacturer and talking to others was somewhere around 120 to 150. And that was
Per session?
per session, per square footage. So the square footage factor was what we were looking at in terms of the square foot total of the ice rink. But now, after last night, even though we didn't quite achieve higher numbers, we think it's more along the lines of 60 people to 90 people at the most. What kind of helped us with that decision making was seeing little kids using the trainer. You know, when they get going on those, you don't want to be in their way. Or just run over.
Well, plus I don't think, I think they don't necessarily, not everyone goes in a straight line.
No, in fact, we found that, which would have been me, a lot of dasher board huggers. Yeah. So it wasn't that the middle of the rink was used so much. In fact, people who were there probably enjoyed it because the middle of the rink was generally open, and other times people were kind of staying along the edges where the dasher boards are.
Help them.
Yeah, sure. So yes, we think that in some respects we need to see how this year works for us in a lot of ways, including some of the concerns, Amy, that you've raised, but also in terms of what our costs will look like. One of the things that we were concerned about is we've had 2 rainstorms since we turned the chiller on. And if we were at Logan Olson Park and we had conditions ready to skate with these 2 rainstorms, we'd be done.
Yep.
And so we were impressed with its ability to maintain its ice integrity, if you will, in spite of the fact that we've had 2 rainstorms. So.
Well, I noticed one thing about this as well, and mind you, I've not been there. My sister's been there. They do the 90-minute skate times, then they close the rink to clear the ice for 30 minutes, and then, so it's a nice, tidy way to, you're always starting at an hour, and so every 2 hours, so it seems to work out, and I would probably think that works pretty well for them. I mean, they seem to find it to be a functioning.
And in our visits with other operators around the state, they mention the same thing. Our intent is to be able to get the groomer back out at the end of the session. It takes about 20 minutes, 4 times around, to groom the rink. And that's sufficient time in between sessions for us to
A half an hour, yeah.
Yeah.
But it just makes it real tidy because you always start on the hour.
Yeah.
If it's an hour and a half and then a half hour to clean the ice.
That's right.
So
That's right.
that might be a thought, that just make it easier for scheduling. Because hopefully at some point in time, you'll be able to reserve tickets, and maybe we'll have punch passes, and maybe we'll do some of that other stuff.
Yes, I mean, that is really the next phase of not just the ice rink, but use of the plaza. We've had lots of inquiries about, when can I rent the whole place and this and that. And so we still are working through the kinds of things we can do, some that we can't, and then what that would cost. And we've been reaching out to other facilities that already do this, looking at their contracts and their rental policies and trying to figure out, where the sweet spot is for us.
Okay.
Shifting gears here then to the golf fees, speaking of sweet spots. There was a question in regards to the junior driving range pass being proposed as it is in your packet at $200, but valid only with the season golf pass. And I think, Jeannie, when you brought this up last time, I was going to provide the clarification for that. So in an email I sent out, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. Sorry, Jeannie, I misspelled your name. I should have my glasses on when I was sending this out to you. One other clarification I need to make in my email to you, I punched in one extra number for comparison's sake, and so we had this large $3,000 and some odd dollar number that had nothing to do with anything. But in essence, what this means is that our goal is to encourage customers to play frequently. It's the business model for the golf course. For those that don't, it might be more worth their while for the daily rates that we have. And so, in essence, this $200 junior driving range pass being available based on an unlimited season pass encourages that. It's to get, particularly with our juniors, is to get more kids playing. So if they didn't want to do that, we have a daily rate, which would be more suited towards less frequency or less play. But this one is based on our golfing season, which is, generally speaking, April to October, which is 28 weeks. Whereas the limited pass for that same period of time allows a golfer to golf every day of that season if they choose to do so. So it's just a matter of having different options available based on the amount of times you think that you might play.
I think Jeannie's point last meeting was, though, that means if I'm a junior, I'm paying $600 for the pass versus adults paying $550. If I'm a junior and all I'm going to do is go to the driving range, I'm going to be paying more than an adult adult who's going to only go to the driving range.
Yeah, and it would be based on the number of times you're going to go to the driving
Yeah,
range.
and what's the cost? What's the cost for a bucket?
Yeah, so right now, we have two different sizes. A regular, which is 45 balls, is $6. And so if you were going during our season for 28 weeks and paying $6 every time you go, but only going there once a week, it would be worth your while not to get that pass. Okay, because you're going to save about $32 in not getting the pass. But if you think that you might do a large bucket, which is twice as many balls, which is right now $11 for a bucket, it's 90 balls, you'd be better off getting that pass because you're already beyond the amount of money.
Well, I think my question was more, you can buy a season driving range pass as an adult by itself, but you can't as a junior.
And it's because the way we've got the junior rates set up, there's already discounts into that. And so without discounting that more, we want to tie those two together. Again, it goes back to the idea that the more times we can get people to come play, in spite of the fact that they would need to buy both of these things, they'll have more frequency of use having both of those things together than they would separately. Because again, on the pass, it's unlimited.
I know, but I still think you're sort of punishing the kids.
Well, we'd rather they not get the pass because it would be cheaper, again, only if they're going to go to the driving range once a week, 28 times. It'd be better for you just to go there and buy the $6 bucket if that's what you're going to do. But if you're going to do more, you'd be better off paying a little more and having unlimited use, going as many times as you want for 28 weeks or more, if we have a longer season.
Do we know how often people use the range? How many times do golfers come and not use the range? Because I know a lot of golfers have a tee time, they come, they hit a bucket, and they go out. So if juniors are consistently golfing and consistently, I can see that then. But do you have an idea of how many times people are just using the range versus using the range as a warm-up?
Well, I can't tell you in terms of frequency, in terms of volume number, but in terms of last year's revenue, in each year since COVID, the total revenue for the driving range has increased. This last year was $175,000. And if we were just looking at, and this is not the case, there are other costs involved, but if we were just looking at the cost to replace driving range balls, which is about $3,000 per order, and we do about 500 dozen balls per order, it's about $15,000 that we spend on replacing driving range balls. That doesn't include the time that staff have to take to mow, fertilize the range. So there's a cost there as well. But I would say we're spending about $80,000 easy on just the driving range. But our revenues are such that we're able to sustain that. In fact, what we're trying to do now, because the driving range does well, is to put money away in our reserve fund so that we can make improvements to the driving range. One of the areas that we've identified that's not helping us is having to buy golf balls because we lose them to people hitting them over the nets. There's some golfers good enough to be able to do that. We have a big wet spot in the first third of the driving range, which we need to address. There's a broken drainage pipe that runs diagonally across the range, and so we've been losing golf balls to that big wet spot. So anything we can do to reduce our cost, particularly to that area, we want to be able to capture that because we want to do these other improvements to the range. We'd like an area across the entire area that people hit from to be one concrete ribbon that we can put into our rotation to hit from, because we're spending money on recovering that area where people hit from, because it's all natural turf. So there's, seed costs, there's sand costs, there's time involved in regrowing these areas. So these are the kinds of things that are being discussed at the board level and with staff in terms of trying to identify where these revenue sources are, and knowing that the driving range isn't going to change much, but there are some little tweaks that we can do based on what we're doing with the revenue to sock that away to do a capital improvement down the road.
Any other comments or questions? This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name, your place of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Mike Johnson, Logan City. I try not to get up and bug you guys too much. But I know it was discussed when you guys did the workshop on the ice rink. There was some discussion of doing a group discount. I know we have a lot of youth groups in the valley who would probably love to come use the ice rink. And I don't see that. I didn't see it mentioned today on the group discount. And then the other thing I wanted to check was student discount. Is that only for USU students, or are we going to extend that also to our junior high and high school students with their ID as well? Just 2 thoughts. Thanks.
Russ, would you like to address that?
Yes. Sorry, I'm looking for my cheat sheet. To the question of student definition, after talking with our staff about this earlier today, we propose that we just leave that as students with an ID for the $3 rate. We don't want to try to identify or define that. We have students at different institutions here in the valley, and so to answer that question, it's just students with ID.
Okay, so they could be at Bridger, they could be at a high school, they could be at a junior high, they could be at
But grade school
USU.
kids don't have an ID, so they have to pay $5. That doesn't make any sense. We should just put an age on it.
We do have an age for 3 and under. We mentioned that already.
So you got the 3 to 6th grade, 5th grade.
Yeah,
And then 5th grade, 6th grade on, they have an
Less
ID.
money, yeah.
They get $3. So
And we're happy to not say without having ID. That's not the concern that we have. It was just trying to identify students, because
I just,
If we just say student age.
yeah. It's
Well,
just,
we could make it 12 years and under then, for $3 a person.
Or
to
18
12,
and
then-
under.
Yeah.
I don't
You know,
know
and
if
5 is
that's
18 and over.
addressing the question.
Yeah, 'cause
You could be 60 years old and be a student, I suppose. So,
well, then you get the senior rate if you're 60.
true.
So
I just think-
what might work is under 18
Yeah.
and students with an ID, because then it covers grammar school
Everybody,
kids
yeah.
and students with an ID.
So
Yeah.
with that,
I like that.
So they can be over 18 if they have an ID? They get
If they have a
$3?
student ID, they've got, and they're over 18. So if they're at USU or Bridger, they would get the $3 rate.
Craig, do you have a comment?
No, we're just still in public hearing, so.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. Okay.
I like that.
So there were 2 parts of this question, right? So the other was on groups. I could use some guidance from council on this one.
If we do the 17 and under, that kind of covers a lot of our youth groups that would want to use it, so.
Yes, well, and in other ways too, family today means different things to different people. And, we're not going to be doing, DNA testing at the window. So it could very well be that we may have to retitle this, but if it were to fit, although if you have a group and you're there not on Monday night, is there a group rate still that would apply? So the fact that we're trying to get this resolved for Saturday, and to address the question that was raised in terms of groups, it could very well be that maybe groups need to be in that same discount category. And we appreciate the fact that we have quantity based on groups using this facility. It's part of the reason why the facility is there. But to answer the question on groups, it perhaps needs to be included in that $3 group that we're presenting to you tonight.
To close the public hearing before we
So-
discuss that, I guess. Yeah.
Anybody else that wishes to address this specific item on the agenda from the public?
I fell asleep, so it was hard getting up here. I don't think that we should charge county residents more to come, we're all in this together, and I don't see any reason to promote adversarial type relationships with anyone in the community.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bring it back to the council then. We can,
So when we have pickleball and whatever else, we have a reservation system. It seems to me that we could offer a group rate with a reservation, so that it's not a random group that just shows up and says, we're a group.
Which would be difficult.
Do we do that with the pool too, Russ? Like, I know there's a group rate to the pool.
We do have group reservation rates and dedicated time, which is usually at the end of public swim days, right? These are they're evening reservations.
Right.
So in the case here, we're talking about possibly two things. One is a group that might come weeknight, let's say, and there would be a rate for them. There could be others who come in a group that want to rent the facility. That part of it, we're still fleshing that out.
Well, I would say, a random group rate to me is a little interesting, but I think if we offer a reservation that you can reserve the time and you fill the brink with 50 people or whatever it is, whatever number you determine, then you could give a group rate for that group for that time. Because I worry that it's just going to become, Amy, Ernesto, Mark, and Jeannie go to the ice rink and we're a group, even though I'd only get it for $3 anyway.
But as would I.
We're getting a $3 discount.
So, it's that, I don't know. I just feel like a group rate should be for organized groups.
Yeah, organized, like not just 20 people showing up saying, we're a group, we're going to escape.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree. A group rate's on reservation, so.
Yeah, and part of this is kind of goes back to the student thing, is creating the definition for this, that becomes part of our fee structure. The other two is just trying to be careful about, exclusive uses, because what we're trying to do is create the blocks of time for public use, right? Through the use of that, I think we'll discover where our slow times are. And it might be that if those slow times are repetitive, that those are the target times we're going to look for in terms of doing
Groups.
group rentals, group use,
Yeah.
because it's going to be off-peak, right? That's the same, it's the same principle.
I think since we don't have any data, we don't know how many people are going to show up, we don't know how much usage there's going to be, I think we got to start somewhere and keep it as simple as possible and then expand from there. But,
Yeah, I mean, we are happy to have you come back
yeah.
when you decide that it needs to work a little
I'm
bit.
happy to come back.
We gotta start somewhere. So
I agree with
let's
you,
keep
Mark.
let's keep it as simple as
Or
possible.
is there a way
That's gonna
to
get-
just leave it open for them to have the authority to establish the group rate and?
No, I think we have to establish the rate.
Yeah,
So what I'm hearing though from your comments at the beginning, it would be $5 per person per session with no time mentioned. That's one change to what's listed here. It'd be $3 per person for 60 and over, active and veteran military, and
Students.
under 18.
I like under 18.
Under 18.
I like under 18.
And students with an ID.
Yeah.
well, I think we should just, I think you should say, $5 for adults and over, 18 and over, and $5 for everybody else, including seniors. It's like you've got seniors and you've got all these
So
criteria.
$5 for 18 and over,
3.
and then 3, the categories would be the active.
Well, you could just use $3 for under 18, and then you could do $3 for active military and seniors over 60. So you'd have like 3 lines, but it doesn't have to be this long. Like, they can be 22 and a half, but not 12. And so I would just add a line if I were doing it. But
Just for clarification,
yes,
on the student, so we're talking about 18 and under or under 18 for students, and then students with ID is the $3, is part of the $3 group. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I would propose, is
Yes.
that
Yes.
students with an
Yeah.
ID.
I'm good with that too.
That's what I have it as.
Okay. So really all we're changing is just that age for the under 18.
And we're able to control how many we have on the rink if we decide it's 60 or 90. And so if there is a group that shows up, and we can accommodate them for that session, we certainly will.
well, the chances are pretty good they're all going to be students, because those are the groups he was talking about.
Yeah.
They'll all be $3
They're all
a piece
gonna be 3
anyway.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is fine based on what
Yeah.
we're talking about here.
I think that 3 is very reasonable for that age group. So I think that's very reasonable.
Yep. Gosh, there's not many places you can have a $10 date night.
No, exactly.
Okay, so that's the skating, the golf.
I'm still hung up a little bit on the way you,
Well, we could recommend that the proposed fee stay at $150 for the junior driving range pass, so that it's
still
equivalent to the
considerably-
cost of the
It's still-
adult.
Yeah, it's still a lot less than the adult, because the adult for a season pass is like $1,200, and then it's $550 for a season driving range. So
But you-
juniors
you
are good for
can-
$600.
but you can buy a $550 driving range without buying a season pass as an
Correct.
adult.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing as a junior.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
No, you can't, it says valid only with
It
a
says
season
valid
pass.
only with a season
You can
pass.
pay $550 as a junior
Oh.
pass.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that's,
Yeah.
It's
Then
just
you don't get
this.
golfing.
Yes. Yeah. That's a discount. So.
So that's kind of how it builds up.
Yeah.
You can buy a pass, or you can buy a range pass, or if you just pay a little bit more, you can get both as a junior.
Yeah. It's a good.
okay.
I didn't dream it up, I'm just.
Yeah, that's a good.
Okay.
No, that's a good.
All right.
I know.
That's a
I
good. That's a
just-
good assessment.
But I didn't know that you could buy the $550 one if you were
That's a junior.
a junior. It wasn't.
It's a rip off, but you can do it.
So I wonder,
You got to go twice a week to be able to justify it.
Play a lot of golf.
You got to play a lot of golf. Makes my back hurt just thinking about it.
I feel like I want to say season driving range past any age. Because I really didn't know that until you said that.
With that clarification, I'm comfortable with the change.
I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
the changes too.
I'm comfortable too.
Cool. I move that we accept resolution 23-49 with the amendments to the pricing for 17 or under 18.
And students.
Yeah, and students.
I'll second that.
Do you guys need any clarification on what those amendments are?
You good? Okay.
Got it. All right.
She heard it if she didn't get it typed.
That's right. It's been recorded.
We'll do a roll call vote for this. Tom?
Aye, I like it.
Amy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Ernesto, aye. Resolution 23-49 passes with the amendments.
We had good comment from the public too. I had multiple people come to me about this, so it's good. It's good feedback.
Thank you, Russ. Next up, we have a public hearing for Resolution 23-47, budget adjustments.
Several to consider. The first is a request to appropriate $80,000 for special inspection services. We're also receiving that funding from those services. $20,329 for police overtime shift reimbursements. A $100,000 loan forgiveness / grant from the state for lead water line inventory. $32,784 for traffic engineering studies. $60,000, this is from fund balance, I'll come back to that. $60,000 for fund balance, from fund balance to increase the need for credit card fees as well as some other supplies for the golf course. And $390,000 grant for after-school programs, passed through federal. And lastly, a request to appropriate $800,000 for contingent legal fees associated with Municipal.
Comments before we open it?
Nope, not from me.
This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
I'm Josh Mahler from Logan. I was wondering if I could get a little bit more detail on the $800,000 contingent legal fees associated with the Woodsonia development.
Which would you like to?
Just as part of the agreement, the city was to cover certain costs associated with moving some retailers out that had contracts that had to be vacated or changed.
Within the mall?
Within the mall.
And so this $800,000 is coming out of taxpayers. It's literally what taxpayers are going to end up getting the bill for it? Or is this part of the RDA?
It is out of the, not out of the general fund, out of our risk management fund that manages risks for the city.
But that's taxpayer money, right?
Well, I mean, all of it is, so yeah.
So we're literally paying $800,000 to relocate these people, all for Holly's for the Woodsonia group.
Contingent to get the development, yes.
Is it worth it?
It's up to.
I mean, that's not including anything from the RDA.
All of this was discussed last week as part of that RDA resolution. This was discussed as part of that entire incentive package. This is just the budgetary moving it out.
Okay, so the $9.8 million.
It's all part of that.
Okay.
Everything that was discussed last time, that was one of the line items.
Okay.
But it is not out of the RDA, it is out of the risk management.
Oh, okay.
And this is up to 800,000, it's not absolutely 800,000 going, it's up to that amount.
So when will you know how much that will cost with moving these businesses out and that?
Still working through that process, so I can give you numbers tonight.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Bring it back to the council.
I would move approval of Resolution 23-47.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Tom?
Aye. Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie? Aye. Ernesto? Aye. Resolution 23-47 passes. Next up, we have a public hearing for ordinance 23-34. Consideration for proposed changes to purchasing procedures.
Thank you. Primarily what we're changing are thresholds that are required to get a purchase order or to do formal bidding. Currently, 0 to 5,000 does not require a purchase order. Between 5,000 and 50 requires documentation obtaining a purchase order, and then over 50 requires formal bidding. Our recommendation now is above 10 requires a purchase order, and then above 100,000 would require formal bidding. It's just to give us the flexibility to work with the suppliers, those who are providing quotes. We have had some friction with some people not wanting to go through the formal bidding process, therefore we receive less bids, simply because of the cost involved in doing a formal written bid. Also, 0 to 5,000 would not require quotes, however, the department or the purchaser would be required to get the best value, and they're accountable for those funds that are spent.
Comments or questions before hearing?
Explained very thoroughly last time, so.
Yeah. This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item, please come up to the mic, state your name and your place of residence, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less.
So my name's Erin Bennett, and I feel like it's a terrible idea to double the limits, maybe like increase it 25 or 50%, but 100%, that seems like quite a bit. We all are familiar with the expression, locked doors keep honest people honest. It's a culture building tool. And I mean, I feel like there may be other areas of the bidding process that would open city and taxpayers up to less risk than doubling the limits by 100%. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on the topic, especially considering all the crime that I've seen happening in Logan City and the culture currently of Logan City. It's alarming to me to think that we're going to
There have been no crimes associated with the purchasing process. You might be talking about other crimes, but I just want to make sure
I'm
no
talking
one's
about
saying.
cultural norms, and the cultural norms that I have been familiarized with within Logan City and government are crime and civil rights violations.
I just want to make sure it's very clear. The things you're talking about are not associated with purchasing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is locked doors keep honest people honest, and if we continue to keep those, I mean, maybe, like you said, like increase it by 50%, but also there again, look for other steps in the bidding process that we can streamline the process and make it a little bit easier and easier for potential vendors to encourage bidding, but in a way that opens taxpayers up to less risk. Because really, like, we are stewards of taxpayer dollars, and that should be, in my opinion, the most important thing on the decision matrix. Protecting our community. Oh, also, I would like to note that it was admitted there are crimes happening.
I do not know that.
Anyone else that wishes to address this specific item? Bring it back to the council.
If you'd like, I can address.
Yeah, I was going to say, could we clarify? Because, I mean, all of these points have, compliance with the open market. There are guidelines and thresholds to ensure that we don't have department heads that are just going rogue. And, I mean,
And they all have-
one of these is just, it's increasing as the amount increases.
And they all have budget lines that they're working under as well, so they can't go rogue.
And I had the same initial reaction as we were looking at these limitations. Should we be doubled? But what's important to know is that the doubling the limitation it's not opening it up for you'll buy things wherever you want. It's just where those who has to do the bidding. So between 10,000 and what's being proposed and 100,000, the department would be doing the bidding. They still have to submit documentation. It's not go do whatever you want. It's just the formal bidding, which is done exclusively by the purchasing department, only happens above 100,000 under the proposal. So that's why I actually feel very comfortable with it. We're still going to scrutinize where they got the bids, what kinds of bids they got in order to get a purchase order. It's just, we're not going to require formal bidding, which is essentially it's our purchasing department doing the bidding for the department.
And can you also I think you mentioned this last time, what drove the need to change these thresholds?
A couple things. Inflation over the last 3 years has been huge. So our $5,000 limit doesn't buy nearly what it used to. So we're having more and more of these regular, fairly everyday purchases go over into over our purchase order limit. And then the second one, that formal bidding, is vendors not willing to participate in the bidding process because there's just too much documentation. Because you have to understand, when somebody does formal bidding, they submit a bid to us. They don't get to talk to us and tell us about all their wonderful things. Their shot is what they put in that bid packet. And so they try to make it as whiz-bang as possible, as pretty as possible, color printing, bound, covers. They do lots of things. Now we could, demand that they not do that, I guess, but it still wouldn't serve the purpose. The purpose is to get more people to bid.
Which in effect would hopefully lower the price to the city because we'd have more bids that would be more competitive.
That's our goal.
And a great number of items that are purchased regularly for departments are purchased through the state competitive bidding process, which is the state issues a huge long list of things that they have gotten competitive bids for, and you can just, and cities and towns and water districts can just order them. And they are by far the lowest price you could get anywhere.
We do piggyback off those as often as we can.
Yep.
So, just thinking out loud,
Yeah.
as inflation was driving costs up, there was more paperwork, more things that otherwise wouldn't have to call for that type of process. In essence, increasing our costs because now you have more people doing more, processing more purchases and things like that.
Right.
So this decreases some of that work.
We only have one purchasing agent and a kind of assistant backup purchasing agent. So if we don't increase our thresholds, we have to either increase the number of personnel or do something else. I'm not sure what else we'll do. Either that or just kind of back up our purchasing process.
So,
Erin, I think you already spoke for 3 minutes.
well, the purchasing agent lied to me in an email. So that there again goes back to the dishonesty. You don't care that she lied?
And we're already
Well, I can show it to you in email. I asked her specifically about charges, and she said, no, there are only this amount, and then I found it myself after I grammar requested Logan City financial documents, which cost me a lot of money.
I remember.
Yeah.
I produced those financial documents myself.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, so.
We did not lie.
She did, the purchasing agent lied to me in an email, and you guys read it.
I'm going to ask you to sit down
I can
because
show
the
anyone an
public
email.
comment time is over.
Well, we're
It's
trying
over.
to protect residents.
The public comment time is over. Thank you.
If they make a purchase under 5,000, that would be on their credit card, and they would have to produce receipts for that, correct?
Typically, it would be through a purchasing card. And we do review those. Receipts are turned in, they're coded. We have 2 people reviewing those to make sure it was a purchase, and a valid purchase. And any questions are brought to me and we review them.
That's what we do too. I've got 40 employees. I see every purchase that they make. I receive every receipt that they make, so it makes sense.
If anybody in the public still wishes to address any questions regarding this, you're more than welcome to reach out to us, call us, email us, and we're more than happy to also reach out to our Director of Finance, Richard Anderson. Any other comments or questions?
Not from me. Would you like a motion?
Yes,
I would
I-
move acceptance of ordinance 23-34.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Tom?
Why don't you have me go last, reverse the order?
He wants you to reverse the order.
You're gonna go last, Tom? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, have me go last.
Jeannie? Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Ernesto? Aye. Ordinance 23-34 passes. Next up, we have Resolution 23-51. Resolution for the recertification of the Logan Municipal Justice Court. Craig?
Okay, the Logan Justice Court is a well-run, efficient court. Judge Lee Edwards is a very capable, well-respected judge. He's a much better judge than he is an ice skater. He does a very good job. The Justice Court, Logan Justice Court is a Class 1 Justice Court, which means they have to have at least 501 citations or cases filed per month. The average case filings for the Logan Justice Court is about 635 per month, so just over 7,600 per year. The state requires recertification of the Justice Court every 4 years, so we're at this time to recertify the Justice Court. There are several statutory requirements to recertify. These include a full-time court that's open, full-time judge is compensated at the statutory range, at least 3 clerks, dedicated courtroom, several other requirements. I met with the judge, I looked at his affidavit and the information provided, and the Justice Court meets the requirements for recertification, so we're here to get that, to request that resolution passed, recertify the court. Any questions?
So the documents that were submitted, all those requirements we meet at this time, the 3 full-time staff, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, thank you.
Do you need us to?
Actually, we need to pass a resolution, yeah.
Okay.
I move we pass resolution 23-51.
I'll second it.
Tom.
We'll do, it's been moved and seconded, we'll do a roll vote call. Roll call vote. There is no public comment on this specific item.
Public hearing was not required.
Yeah, public hearing, sorry, public hearing, not public comment. Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Amy?
Amy says aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Ernesto, aye. Resolution 23-51 passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
may I ask that I be dismissed from the rest of the meeting? It's exciting, I know, but for medical reasons, I think I need to disengage.
Thank you, Tom, for joining us, and yes, you may be excused and get some rest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Tom.
Bye, Tom.
Thank you.
That is it for our action items for tonight. Next, we have workshop items. First up, we have Resolution 23-50 regarding our CAPA report. Looks like Amanda looks a little bit different today.
I am not Amanda. I am Russ, and I am reporting on behalf of Amanda for the Community Development Block Grants CAPER, or the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. This is for the fiscal year or project year 2022, which is from July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. The CAPER reviews the city's annual action plan and the 5-year consolidated plan. We are in the 4th year of our 5-year plan, and the main objective of the consolidated plan and the annual action plan.
Russ, can you turn on this one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be nice.
Ernesto was going.
Someone turn it off. There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the main objective is to distribute the funds 40% towards infrastructure in low to moderate income areas, 10% towards remediation of access or mobility barriers, 30% towards community needs, 20% towards public facilities or services. I'm here to report on 3 projects completed during this project year. The first is the Whittier Center Playground flooring or base area. It was originally installed with these unit tiles, excuse me, that you see on the left. The tiles over time began to break apart and separate. There were some dangerous cracks in areas. And so that was replaced with a poured surface without any seams, a poured in place rubber type of compound. It should be a better surface and have better durability in the long run. The other project, excuse me, is the intersection of 600 East between 5 and 700 North. There's 2 crosswalks there that were improved. You can see the before on the top and the after on the bottom. The one did not have any sort of improvement, no curb, gutter, sidewalk, crosswalk, and then these also include the ADA accessible ramps with the truncated dome element there. It's that kind of pinkish element there.
Did we paint the houses too?
Yeah, white
No,
to blue.
We did not paint them.
This is on the same block and part of the same project. This is a sidewalk that was non-existent. On the left, you see the before, and then on the right, you see the after. This included some grading as there's some slopes in the area. This is the west side of 600 East Street.
Serious elevation changes there.
Yeah.
Yes. And then last, this was the larger of the project. This is approximately 3,000 linear feet of sidewalk through Willow West that now accesses playgrounds, pavilions, and provides better street access in the area.
Nice.
So the before is on the left, and then the after is highlighted in yellow on the right.
Wow.
That's a lot.
And then I'm reporting the 20% cost for the administration and planning is broken up into these two categories, 88,000 and 21,000 and change. Thank you. Any questions? And let me just warn you, if they are very detailed questions, I will have to default to Mike or Amanda, as I don't know too much about this topic.
Okay. No.
And we can send our questions before our meeting
Yeah.
as well, so.
Those are some great improvements.
Yeah, they are. Really.
How much sidewalk on?
The sidewalk on 6th
Yeah,
East is
that's
really
nice.
nice,
Yeah.
really nice. And it really improves mobility for students to get to the university.
A lot there at Willow Park.
Yeah. So,
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
before Tanya starts on item B, I need to let you know and let the public know that I am a proponent in this project. So I will not be participating in your discussion. I'll just be sitting here.
Okay.
Try not to.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you, Jeannie, for posting that.
Okay.
This is a rezone for ordinance 23-35. Thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This is a rezone request from 7 property owners coming together to have their properties downzoned from TC2 to NR6. You can see here outlined in blue, pardon me, are the 8 properties. There are 7 applicants or 7 proponents, but 1 proponent has 2 properties, so there's 8 total. It is located on 10th North between 100 and 200 East.
At First North.
First North, I'm sorry. First North, 1 and 200 East. 4 of the properties on the north side of First North. This is the Adams neighborhood, and 4 properties are on the south side of First North, and that is the Wilson neighborhood. The purple line surrounding, that you can barely see here, is the historic district. All properties within, on all of the 8 properties in this proposal are in the historic district. Just for context, Tabernacle, Church and Federal, and the Temple. I think you all know the area well. So this is a long-range plan. It is TC, Downtown Commercial Zone. The general plan describes the TC district extending from approximately 2 blocks east and west of Main Street and having a mix of high-density retail, office, commercial, and civic spaces. This is the flow. The current zoning is TC2, and some of you may remember in 2018, after a deliberate zoning process, TC2 was established as a buffer between the density of TC1 and the residential districts to the east. So essentially there's 2 tiers to the TC zoning. The TC1 is the high downtown density pattern, and TC2 essentially is the outer perimeter, the lower and less dense, larger setbacks, and essentially just the transition between the higher density and the residential. Taking a closer look at the 8 parcels, they are again outlined in blue. 4 are owner-occupied single-family homes. 1 is an owner-occupied single-family home with an apartment. 1 is a triplex, and there are 2 vacant lots. The vacant lots are, the larger vacant lot is where the fourplex burned down last year. You probably are familiar with that. And then the vacant lot to the rear is the applicant's garden. We learned that at the Planning Commission.
Nice. That's a nice.
All of the structures are built between 1900 and the middle of the last century. They are historic in nature. The Historic District surveys grade contributing structures to the Historic District as either A or B. all of the homes here are B rating. And again, just to reiterate, all of the homes are in the historic district. But in evaluating this, staff felt that it was important to look at the whole block as a whole. This illustrates neighboring uses of the entire block. This is not a zoning map, but we used colors that were familiar to all of us. The white line represents a zone change, and R6 is to the east, to the right of this graph, or this illustration, and TC2 is to the left as we're looking at the different uses. This is just a use map. Again, the project parcels are in blue. There is quite a mixture of TC uses. There are 4 commercial properties. One is the law firm, the old library, what is this? This is a
professional.
Yep, professional realtor, and then this is the Avalon offices. Also, are multiple multifamily structures along the whole block, and also single-family homes. And from a planner's perspective, and in compliance or with the vision of the general plan, this is quite a good representative of a TC2 block. Here is an illustration of what the proposed rezone would look like. You see the tabernacle that is zoned NR6, as is all religious institutions. Outside of that, downtown is either public, which is in blue, TC1, which is the higher density, and the TC2 buffering between the TC1 and the residential. The long-range plan calls for TC. Staff typically adheres to the long-term plan as it gives us consistency and predictability, which is very important in planning. So the reality is, in a planner's view, is that the mixture of current uses on this block aligned with the FLUP, the Adams neighborhood plan. Both of those designate this as a downtown commercial area. It is understood, and we understand that growth and development is very unpredictable. It's uncertain. We don't know the timing. I mean, the big questions are how and when timing will happen in this area. It very much relies on free market, and owners need to sell or not sell their homes to make anything happen to begin with. Developers typically don't buy a parcel to redevelop. They typically look at clustering of the parcels to make their development more realistic for themselves. A couple, since I have been working with you all, have been L59, which is not far from here. Took many parcels, and then the Third South and First West trio group, the mixed-use development that is currently going in right now. Multiple properties went into that. Another piece of important information for this, though, to consider is that the city, as well as the Adams neighborhood plan, promotes the preservation of historic structures. We have the Historic Preservation Committee with the committee that evaluates everything in any external changes to historic structures. There are guidelines in place to preserve the exterior of these structures. And then also the TC2 promotes preservation just simply through the ability to convert existing structures into a variety of different uses. So something might become a restaurant, but you can't, you still have to live within the guidelines of the planning or the historic preservation guidelines, and hopefully retain the character of the structure. So just in summary, I want to reiterate just a couple of things. The TC zoning district aligns with the general plan, the Adams plan, the current zoning, and the goals of the outer core downtown. currently zoned as a buffer transition between, a buffer or a transition between the densities of the TC1 and the neighborhood, is doing its job. It's got a nice variety of beautiful homes and some commercial spaces and a few mixed use. Lowering density is contrary to the long-term overall goals and visions expressed in the general plan and the current planning. And then important for us is that staff considers that previous deliberate planning efforts and visions are very important. And we thought long and hard about this, and we recommend that the TC zoning district remain. Planning Commission is forwarding to you the recommendation of denial of the rezone, 6-0. There were no public comments, but I would like, if you would care to, hear a couple of the conversations that the Planning Commission had, if you'd like to. Sure. Okay. So one concern was that it would set, downzoning this would set a precedence to other historic structures or what have you in the area. This is not a typical request. And that was one of their concerns, is spot zoning elsewhere if this were to come to fruition. Another concern, or another thought, which I thought was quite good, was revisiting the uses allowed in TC2. Are all of the uses compatible with historic homes? We all want to ensure the character of these beautiful structures and beautiful neighborhoods. So just reevaluating whether or not the uses that are allowed in TC2 are appropriate. That was, I thought, a good suggestion. The other thing that they talked about was the HPC has guidelines in place for any kind of movement, whether it's a tear down and redevelopment or whether it is a restaurant coming in and doing internal work. They would evaluate anything happening on the outside of the home. They would give a certificate of appropriateness for any structure in the historic district, which all of these are. So a lot to think about. This is what I have to share tonight. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
So within the historic preservation zone, though, the Historic Preservation Commission could, even regardless of an A or a B rating, could make a recommendation for demolition down the road, though, correct? It doesn't disallow, but they have to use those standards and those set identifications as to.
Correct. The state does not allow us to not tear a building down for whatever reason. Property rights. But where the historic preservation would help is that any reconstruction has to live within the guidelines of the historic district. So you can't have yin and yang, you can't have something modern. There are very specific guidelines for either alteration or redevelopment. Okay.
Did you say in 2017 or 2018 it got changed to TC2? Is that?
So here's what I understand. This was before my time, but in 2018, there was an ordinance passed. And as part of that ordinance, some, I guess, separated. I think it was all TC1. And then there was a deliberate, long time process to try to buffer the density and the intensity of TC1 with the neighborhood housing districts. So that's where TC2 came about. And I'm happy to be corrected if there's anything about that that is not 100% right.
No, I was on the council at that time, and yes, we revised and separated TC1 and TC2
into the two tiers.
And identified what areas TC1 and TC2 would be. So TC2 is also on the other side of Main Street.
That's correct.
As well.
So before it became TC2, what was it?
It was just TC and the flop. we didn't have a distinction between 1 and 2.
Like TC. So how long ago has it been since it was residential? Or was it ever residential?
I don't, that original FLUP, I think, is from 15 years
Flood
ago.
is from '08, I believe.
Yeah.
So Ernesto, you can kind of see right here on the edge, I should have done it a little broader scope, but the general plan identifies the town center zone about 2 blocks on east and west of Main Street.
And up to 500 north.
Right, yeah. I was just kind of isolating this little area, but that's correct. There's a north-south boundary as well.
And so that dates back to 2008, you said?
What's the reason for the change? I mean, why do they want to change it?
The applicant wrote, you should have it in your packet, the applicant wrote that they are, they're wanting to preserve
Let's see that in our packet.
the home, the structures, the historic structures.
The current structures.
Correct. The 7 property owners are interested in preserving their historic homes.
Thank you.
And that can be better described, I believe, I guess it's not a public hearing, but the applicant is here tonight.
But the FLUP, they're not asking for a change in the FLUP. They're
They are
just
not.
asking
It's
for a
just the
down zone
current zoning.
for the current zoning.
Yeah.
So explain to me why that matters. Okay, I can write that and get information. Okay. So I do want to clarify, you said there was no public comment, you mean
Tonight.
submitted? And
No
yeah.
public, there has been nothing submitted from the public.
Just the public comment made at the planning commission hearing. There was some
Okay.
public comment there.
Correct. So at the planning commission meeting, 3 individuals spoke. They were all 3 property owners. One is the applicant, and then there were 2 other of the 7 owners that were there speaking. But we have not received any written comment. I should clarify that.
Thanks, I just wanted to clarify that.
And I believe part of their concern is they want more
Bless you.
of a voice for, if it's zoned, I'm not going to speak on it. I quite honestly am not sure.
It's okay. We know where to find those people.
So my understanding would be, so if this becomes NR6 and somebody would come and purchase all these parcels, they would then have to go and get them rezoned.
That's correct.
Okay. Whereas now the zoning is TC2. So if they came with, if they purchased the lots and they came in with a project that met the TC2 zone, it would just be able to move forward with the normal planning commission review.
Yep.
And the historic preservation. review.
Actually, it doesn't need planning commission if it's a acceptable use.
If it's compliant, yeah.
Permitted use.
But
Yeah.
they review the
Yeah.
project.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
But wouldn't the historic,
would still weigh in.
okay.
Yeah, historic
If
would
it's
definitely.
just a tenant improvement, if it's a restaurant that comes in, restaurants are permitted in this zone currently with the TC2. If there is nothing that is changed on the exterior of the home, the Historic Preservation Committee doesn't get involved either. There will be things like parking and things that we would review, but the exterior, the character of the neighborhood could not change without the Historic Preservation Committee reviewing. Then they offer a certificate of appropriateness or make suggestions to change.
I don't have any other questions.
I don't either.
Any
other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you. Next up, we have our last, oh no, not our last, another rezone. Ordinance 23-36. Ross, please. Read this for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a application from Bear River Mental Health, and it's for a new receiving center. So if you recall, about 6 months ago, we created a new line item in the Land Development Code that allowed receiving centers in the public zone. And that's the only zone that the city currently allows a receiving center. This area was chosen by the applicant for a number of reasons. They feel that this is a good location. It's currently zoned commercial. This is at the northeast corner of 2nd West and Auto Mall Drive. It's currently in an area that's surrounded by vacant parcels on 3 sides within Logan City, and then 1 vacant parcel in a border in North Logan City to the north. To the west, you have NR6 zoning, and the Quell Meadows subdivision is kind of slowly developing there. To the south, you have commercial, which allows for a wide range of building types and land uses. And then to the north, the North Logan is a commercial designation. So the FLUP obviously doesn't anticipate commercial. It's kind of difficult to predict public. The FLUP doesn't predict public development very well. We didn't anticipate the fire department moving across the street. And so it's a little more short-range planning when it comes to public development. And so obviously the FLUP doesn't anticipate public development here. The site is pretty undeveloped from a street improvement standpoint. It's a narrow kind of country road. It is paved, but there's no curb gutter or sidewalk. And 200 West is actually slated to become a collector road. So it's one of those medium-sized roads, about 80 feet wide. And then you can see here, traditionally used for agricultural. So a receiving center is a 24/7 community center staffed by therapists, nursing, counseling, and other individuals to help with mental health or substance abuse crises. Individuals are assessed, stabilized, and observed within a 23-hour period. Most individuals are given the appropriate treatment and discharged within that period of time. If additional treatment is needed, then steps can be taken by caseworkers. Who can use the receiving center? It's available for anyone that needs the service. Now, this center is intended for the entire Bear River region, which would be Box Elder County, Cache County, and Ridge County. So individuals traveling, probably up to 100 miles if they're way on the other side of Box Elder or in the Bear Lake area. So these could be folks traveling from distant areas. Where are other receiving centers located? Davis, Wasatch, Weber, Southwest, at Four Corners, and then the Salt Lake area. If you notice, sorry for the pixelation here, this is a relatively new use. So in my research, it's hard to determine impacts because most of these are pretty new. The Planning Commission recommended approval. They voted 6-0 in their recommendation. As we went through Planning Commission, we had a couple of public comments. One was from a former city council member, Dean Quell, who lives in the area. He made a statement saying that the single-family area will likely stay undeveloped as he chooses to possibly not sell or put some sort of conservation easement on that. And then some of the other comments were from Beth and her team. Beth Smith is the applicant from Bear River Mental Health. And she's teamed up with individuals from Cache County and the Utah State Legislature to provide this facility for the citizens of this 3-county area. So back to my current, or my earlier point is we don't really anticipate public, and so I think the best thing to do in this situation is to just analyze what we know and determine, is this appropriate in this location? Is this a good spot for this facility? And not worry so much about the future land use plan. Okay, so having said that, I am happy to answer any questions.
So from Planning Commission, it was my sense that the Bragg team had looked at a variety of locations and they felt that this location met all their needs. Is that correct? That's correct.
Yeah, the applicant feels like this is a good location. They were scrambling a little bit because they had a couple of different areas that they were hoping that they felt were also good locations, but those deals had fell through from a real estate transaction standpoint. And so they were able to lock this one up, but it is on a timed contract. So they're given some, I think, till January or something. But the other thing that I failed to mention was this this cone, which is kind of 5 different elements to help with mental health issues. And the one thing that the Cache or the Bear River area is lacking is this receiving center. So we have all of these other 4, we just do not have this. So this is kind of the last piece to that puzzle, which this cone was developed by a team from the state, and they feel that is a good comprehensive way to deal with some of these issues.
So I noticed the one public comment from Mr. Quayle was about the proximity to public transportation. So Cache Valley Transit comes down Main Street. What would be the closest public transit location for the receiving center?
So it's going to be about 2 blocks there. I think there's a stop, a little more than 2 blocks. I'm not exactly sure, but I think there's a stop in this area between Auto Mall and 1800.
Okay, and then is there one else on 14 near the Deseret Industries? Does the bus route go down that one as well?
Yeah, but that's 4 blocks south of this. I know there's a route on 1800 as well. I just don't know where the stops are.
Okay, so conversations could happen with Cache Valley Transit about locating
Get the stop closer.
or creating proximity for them if needed. Okay.
And Beth kind of addressed that. She felt like actually most of the patients would not come via bus, but they might. But yeah, they can arrive in a friend's car or they can arrive in a patrol car. Typically they're dropped off. It's designed in a way that the drop off is a little bit more discreet. It's kind of around back.
Yeah, and I, with my understanding too, the fact that this does serve the entire Bear River region, the proximity to transportation and to the hospitals, this is a great location because it's close to both Logan Regional and to Cache Valley Hospital, although they don't have a behavioral health unit, but it is in close proximity, so.
Yes, that's mentioned in the paperwork as well.
Okay. Do you know what their time frame is on the real estate contract? I'm assuming time is of the essence.
January?
December 30th?
They need an answer by December 13th.
13th?
So this is scheduled for action item December 5th. So
okay.
They're hopeful to get an answer at that time.
Okay, so any questions we have, we should really make sure we address to that in writing or anything prior to our meeting on the 5th. Okay.
And this is just a design review, or excuse me, a rezone. The design review would come later when the facility is designed.
Any other questions or comments?
No.
All right. Thank you, Russ.
You're welcome.
Gotcha.
Next up, we have budget adjustments, Resolution 23-52.
3 items to consider that are really just 2. The first one is a request to appropriate $161,000 plus $29,000. They're in 2 separate funds, and that's why they're presented separately here. But both of them for wildland fire reimbursements. Our firefighters, some of our EMTs are also firefighters, and so they'll go on wildland fires, and then the reimbursements we receive obviously would go back to the EMS fund or the general fund, depending on where the person was located. And then lastly is a request to appropriate $1,854,702 for a new ladder truck. The plan, or the proposal is, if council approves it, would be that we order a new ladder truck. We use our existing ladder truck along with a backup fire engine for a period of time. Those would be sold off. That would actually net about half of the cost of the new engine. But obviously we couldn't sell the existing ladder truck until we got a new ladder truck.
How long does it take for a ladder truck to arrive?
3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years? Wow. Wow.
It's coming from outer space, or?
Takes a long time to construct each little piece of that ladder truck. Is it a bigger ladder truck than the one we have?
Same size.
Same size.
And
Custom.
why is it necessary to replace the ladder truck?
They wear out.
Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Why is it necessary?
So a couple things. So the current ladder truck is approaching 15 years old, believe it or not. 3 to 4 year replacement, it puts it at 20. NFPA guidelines recommend 15-year replacements, and then they go to reserve status. We've done a good job taking care of our apparatus, so they've lasted us, but we are getting to the end of life. And we do have a good arrangement made for this ladder truck to keep it within our zone. Is a possible sale right here in the valley that would keep us with our ability to respond to, obviously Logan's growing, lots of big commercial, lots of tall residential, which require access to those roofs, which is why ladder trucks are now a bigger concern for us here in the valley. But obviously the 3 to 4 year build is a super big concern for us. The other issue is every year the costs are going up with inflation, and with Pierce, the company that our Siddons Group, they lock us in at our price. Most likely a $1.8 million truck, unfortunately, 3 or 4 years from now, has then gone up another 10 or 15%. It's really hard to predict, but that's what it's been the last couple of years. So the timing is actually right. With our Rosenbauer engine, that's a reserve engine, we have a buyer in Canada that's willing to pay $400 for that. So with the sale of the vehicles, hopefully recoup really close to half. We're projecting about close to $1 million in being able to sell those other 2.
So I just have this, you just said that it has gotten to the end of its life.
Mm-hmm.
But you are selling it to another entity in the valley. So how does that work?
So believe it or not, so our current ladder truck is a 2008. Okay, the one that we're proposing to sell here in the valley would be replacing a 1998, which is practically vintage, right? Like that's an old ladder truck. So that era, the 2008s and 2009s, hold their value very well for about 20 to 25 years. So like I said, the NFPA recommends like a 15-year replacement, and after that they could go into kind of like a reserve, right? Like 5 to 10 years you can get out of them. So it'll really still be in that window and serviceable for us out of Station 120, which is up there close to the university. So that puts a ladder truck on both ends of our response zones within Logan. So yes, it would be kind of used as a reserve, because then the front line would come back down to downtown Station here on 200 North. So yeah, it's older, but the alternative is another $2 million truck and waiting for an additional 3 years. So it's not ideal, but we do have a good option to keep it in the fleet and to service the zones here in Logan. So
So it'll be at the fire station that's up by the university?
Yeah, we have.
Isn't that our fire station?
We man that station. North Logan owns the station and the apparatus. So the sale would be to North Logan City.
Okay.
They would purchase that
I
truck.
didn't know North Logan owned that.
So not Station 72.
The one in North Logan.
Station
Not
120.
not the one behind the dorms, right?
Correct,
It's the one
correct.
that's.
Station
on
120
Logan on-
is at 2000 North, 1200 East.
Oh, okay.
So it's close to the university. but
Yeah, I
it's
was
not- Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
getting really confused.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
End of life doesn't mean it's completely useless, just mostly used.
Well, I
Like
just didn't-
people in their 60s. Like we're mostly.
Whoa.
But did you have some, is that what you're saying, Rich?
What does that say about me?
I wanted to make a comment about that. So I have a question. I know a couple of years ago, we got a grant for replacing equipment, and then they punched holes in it,
Yeah.
right? So
That is true.
this engine would be then hopefully more eco-friendly in terms, is it possible to do, I'm just, it's just a question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So actually, the size of ladder trucks are pretty prohibitive in what's available for eco-friendly.
Okay.
It is a diesel engine. Obviously, it comes with, the exhaust scrubbers and everything that comes along with those things, the DEF fluids, everything they can do, but that's a big, heavy truck.
Okay.
You're around 54 tons to 60 tons, right? So it takes a lot of power. It's a large Cummins diesel, but they are the newest state-of-the-art diesels that come out with exhaust systems on them. So
Okay, thanks.
we wish, maybe one day, maybe one
one
day
day.
you see that.
We'll have a battery-powered fire truck.
Yeah, they are big and powerful.
We had one of those in year 3.
Tesla,
Tesla
Tesla trucks.
Charger in the bay.
Yeah, well, anyway, thank you for answering weird questions.
You bet. Any
on
other
my part.
questions? Yeah.
None for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for our workshop items. Any other considerations from the council?
Remind everyone to get out and vote tonight. They have
I have 10 minutes over. Yeah,
10 minutes to vote.
Mike, you still got 10 minutes to get your vote.
I wanted to share that there have been a couple of improvements on what I consider improvements. I hope everybody considers improvements on the agenda itself for our meetings and also on the minutes. So the agenda now has links to the actual items, which is very helpful. It makes it easier to navigate and just click through things and find the relevant information that you want. Same with the minutes. The team that Teresa and Esley and the effort that they put together, they managed to put a timer going for our meetings. And now in the minutes, you'll be able to click on the timer. It'll take you specifically to that moment in the video of the recording. So anybody that is listening, you can take advantage of those improvements. So
I took advantage of that in the minutes or in the agenda
Yes, me too.
this week, where it was like, oh, I can just click and go right to the document instead of having to look at the agenda and then go back to find it. So good job, Esley. That was really
Very
helpful.
nice.
So thank you for those things, for implementing those changes. We good?
Actually, I have just one quick announcement. So the William A. Bernard Warming Center is going to be opening on December 4th. As people may or may not know, that is a safe, warm place for people to shelter during the coldest nights here in Cache Valley. So their hours will be from 7 p.m. till 8 a.m. and they are located in the St. John's Episcopal Church on the corner of 100 North and 100 East. So.
And just a reminder for about the festivities on Saturday that are happening, starting I think at 1 or.
Mark knows.
Starts at 1 o'clock. Winter market at 1 o'clock and food trucks. And ice skating actually starts at noon. So that will be great. And then at 5:15, I think, there's going to be various musical groups.
There's a singer that.
Yes, participating at the plaza.
There is a singer.
Yeah.
We might know.
So some nice entertainment at the plaza. 5:15, I think the Bluebird is unveiling their their ornaments in their windows. And 6 o'clock is the parade. And then Santa will be in the plaza until the fireworks at 8 o'clock. And hardly wait.
And the fireworks will be in Merlin Olsen Park.
They'll be over Merlin Olsen Park, but you'll be able to see them from Center Street from the plaza.
And the fireworks, for everyone who doesn't know, were provided by an outside entity.
Correct.
They are not using city funds.
2 outside entities that I'm aware of, so.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We will adjourn our city council meeting and reconvene for our redevelopment agency meeting.
Thank you for mentioning that.
And first up, or the only item that we have for tonight, is an action item, public hearing for resolution 23-48. Kirk.
Very good, thank you.
One of these days, we're going to put you at the front of the agenda.
Actually, next meeting, there is an item. Teresa bumped me to the beginning, so it's a city council item.
Well, we can change it.
What a tough crowd.
We can change that.
Wow, okay. Moving on now. Okay, so this is a public hearing to appropriate $500,000 to Woodsonia from the Affordable Housing Fund. We've talked about this several times. I can answer any questions, but I think that's all the introduction we need.
I think it is worth mentioning, I should have mentioned it previously with the question under the other council meeting. These resolutions are to comply with budgetary procedures. They're not actually approving the giving of these funds to those entities. That happened during the last meeting when we approved the
Budgets.
agreement
Yeah.
with the contractor. So while comments are wonderful, we're just trying to say, do we stay in budget or do we violate the budget because we signed an agreement that calls for appropriation? So just wanted to make sure that's clarified that.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Even though nobody's here to comment. Just for our own edification, I guess.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, it's a procedural issue as opposed to an approval issue.
There we go. Yes.
Any comments or questions before we open it up? This is a public hearing. If you would like to comment on this specific item on the agenda, I'm talking to Mike and the lady back there. Please come up to the mic and state your name and your place of residence. I don't see anybody running to the mic, so we will bring it back to the agency.
I move we approve resolution 23-48 RDA.
I would second that. And just a clarification of what affordable housing is, though, could you give us that, Kirk? Like, what's the definition of affordable housing?
They have a percentage built into the contract.
Yeah, so affordable housing, and we look to basically HUD standards, but also I believe the state has a definition, and as far as I know, we adopt that into our own code, but it equates to 80% of the average median income for Cache County. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. So was that a second, you said?
Yep.
It's been moved and seconded since Tom is no longer with us. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Resolution 23-48 RDA passes. And that is it for our meeting. We are adjourned.
Good job, Ernesto.
I shouldn't make this joke.
I thought about it as I said it. Yes. I guess I should have said no longer in our call, on the phone. Or yes. Wow. About.